Okay, we're recording. Josh, how are you today?
I'm so good. I'm so good. Really happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Where are you?
I'm in Bristol at the moment. I'm just in the sort of side of town up in the hill, Clifton in Bristol, which is cool.
Nice, nice. You've
It's
lucked out. You've got to UK. And you've managed to nail a little bit of sunshine. We don't get a lot of that over here, and you've managed to bring some sunshine with you, mate.
We brought it on over. We tried to time it. We tried to time it perfectly. I tell you, we these tours. I reckon this would be. We got in a little bit early. I reckon we're over in Europe, but I reckon next year we'll have to go like start the whole thing in April, sort of May-ish. I reckon it'd be perfect. It's just starting to get cold back home as well, so we're
Love it, love it. Right, let's get your playlist rolling. I'm going to ask you for track one, please, Josh. So tell me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
the song of all my favorite intro of all time is this song is a song by Curtis Mayfield, and it's called "So in Love." Now, this one's I think this is kind of like it's this horn line at the beginning here that just keeps on going and gets better and better and better. And my favorite thing about this whole song, I mean, I'm not, I mean, I love this song, but I mean, I love Curtis Mayfield, but this isn't my favorite Curtis Mayfield song by any means. The actual song itself, is just isn't as amazing to me as this intro. I can just listen to the intro on
Yeah,
repeat. It's just this kind of, you've got. I think we've almost sort of close to a minute in before the vocals even come in,
yeah,
and it just keeps on building. And there's these layers upon layers of horns here, and they're so rich and so soulful for me, so much sort of feeling behind them. And then there's kind of this and then these new parts just keep getting added. So I love this about this track, and it's always been a big influence on horn arrangements for me in general, and Teskey Brothers songs and stuff I've referenced to horn arranges, something that me and Harry Angus listened to a lot during the recording of the Winding Way record, and so it's had a big impact on me, this one.
Josh, I'm really interested in what you said when you touched on that track, saying it's about a minute before anything really, really sort of you get any vocals or anything. Um, I'm always intrigued as to people's approaches to intros because if we look at Curtis Mayfield as an example, you've got "So in Love," which has got that kind of beautiful sort of keys at the beginning until you say the brass drops, and it's a beautiful song, but it takes a while for it to really establish itself. Whereas you look at something like I guess some of the bigger hits like "Move On Up" or "Tripping Out" or "Push a Man," they're instant. Like just a call to arms straight away, straight in. Like what "Move On Up," arguably one of the greatest intros ever. It's just that instant kind of like blast of horns, and so I'm intrigued as to what your approach will be to when you're writing and recording with intros. Do you, because if we look at sort of trends in how people consume their music now, everything's Spotify playlists, there's just music everywhere, and you've got to kind of get your way through. And I know with a lot of more, I guess, commercial pop acts, they're trying to look at the actual science of it. Like, right, we can hook them in like 2 seconds, and we can, if we start with a chorus, we can, how much of these kind of trends and the way that people get music through, streaming platforms now, how much of that and the way that some, that that there is so much music there, and to find your way through, you really have to grab them. How much of that kind of filters through? I'm going right way around the houses with this question here, Josh, but bear with me. I want to know how much of these kind of things filter through into your creative process, if at all.
Yeah, yeah. This sort of the science and the sort of trying to make a hit, I guess, isn't it? And it's probably, to answer your question there, I think I don't think it's ever come into our creative process, and I don't think it's ever um yeah, it's throughout our records, and on our most recent record, it's something that we've never taken into account really. And I feel really lucky that we've never really had to. Um, our first record, it was never something that when we created the music, it was never something that really expected to be in any way popular. It was something that we just wanted to sort of do, that we, sell at our gigs and have the is what we do. Um, and as far as songwriting goes, we kind of like I always talk about songs as being just individuals and sort of like they are a person within themselves. Each song that comes your way is this sort of this has its own consciousness, and it's
Yeah,
so once you get to know that song, it's kind of just trying to find the answer of what this song wants and needs. So I kind of think of them as like, we are their sort of, their vessel to sort of move into the world through.
yeah,
But who do you want to be when you grow up, song,
yeah, yeah,
like so it's kind of, and so just finding the answer to that question is the main job of songwriting for me. And so it's just kind of like, what do you want? What do you need? Some songs are really easygoing, simple songs, and they don't need much at all. They're just really, and you just and they're done in seconds, and it's just sort of the core point of them is done.
yeah,
They throw you, and then other songs are really tricky individuals, and they take a lot more puzzle working, and really, you have to get into the kind of you have to have a big conversation with them and say, what, and they don't give you a straight answer. So I would think if you had and I think it's really disappointing if you take a song and then you sort of just intentionally try to turn it into something it doesn't want to be, which I think would be the answer to that question of just going like, no, let's, do this. That would be not what the song, um, needs and deserves. So we've been lucky enough to always sort of just, yeah, find the answer for that track and work in that way. And yeah, so in no ways have we sort of tried to use any of that science,
yeah,
really. That's probably my answer to that. And I would add to that, that I really love just good listening music. So every time when
yeah,
I listen to things as a whole, I kind of all the music I love is something that you can kind of just put on in like the kind of tester that I do when I sort of move away from it, because when you get into you sort of dig into the song and you work out the details and you go, okay, I think this is right. And then I always love to just step away and put it on almost in the distance and just go, is this something I'd like to hear? Is this something I'd listen to? Is this something that I'd kind
sure,
of put on when I had some friends over on a record and I would feel proud to have on in the house while we cook some food, or
yeah,
that's kind of my tester of music. And if it's sort of not doing that, then something maybe isn't quite right as well, so in some ways I'm sort of, where Sam, he probably, would more go deeper in what the song wants, and no, this isn't a nice song. So
yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
little bit soft in that way. Yeah, so I kind of, so maybe I mold them a little bit as far as I know. So I'm saying that because that might be my only sort of more popular reference of popular stuff that I like to make. So I do like it to be good listening. I don't want it to be sort of you know, in your face and a bit sort of like, challenging on the ears, so that's something.
sure.
So I might round it off in a little way in that regard.
Okay. Josh, tell me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Yeah, so I've put down a Charles Bradley song which is called Loving You, Baby. I think the title of this one is
What
just
a
Loving You,
record, man.
Baby.
What a
And
record.
what a record, right? And I'm referencing it in a live sense because Charles was when I saw this track live at the Golden Plains Music Festival in Victoria, Australia, and he came out and it was right where Charles was doing it was his first tour out to Australia, and he was sort of right at the peak of that record, had, done that record, and he was just riding the wave of this thing, he was 64 years old. He was, never really cracked it as far as a record out into the world until that moment, and he was just kind of giving everything to the people in his performances. And when I saw this sort of live and I saw Charles doing this and the connection he had with the people and the sort of the way he was putting every bit of emotion into his into this song and and into his performance and
Yeah,
putting his heart really on the line. I think this is sort of like this is what I love in music. I realized at that moment this is it. I'm seeing this, all the records that I've heard this captured in. I hadn't really seen it on the stage before, someone really doing what I love right there in front of me, and that was so this song, and every time I hear it, it sort of brings me back to that moment, this kind of like ecstasy that I was feeling watching this excitement that I found sort of
Yeah.
watching this. Um, and this particular song is the one that really brings me back to that moment, So every time I hear it, the rawness of it, the kind of the daptone sound on there as well, it's sort of just yeah, really beautiful for me. So it's so I put that as my sort of as my most impactful sort of song.
Wonderful. Josh, tell me a little bit about growing up. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a town called Warrandyte, which is in Victoria, Australia. It's sort of to the northeast of Melbourne. We're about sort of 35, 45 minutes out. As the sort of much like, where we are here in Bristol, where it doesn't take that long to get out of that direction in Melbourne, and you sort
Yeah.
of come out into the hills and the river and the woods. So we're out in the sort of what we call the bush out there, and it's
Mm.
sort of um it's a we're in among the gum trees. It's a home among the gum trees, and it's sort of so it's really cool in that way. It's also an area that's really rich in it's live music sort of venues in and around the area. So sort of out in St Andrews, we sort of call it, and sort of Panton Hill and all the surrounding kind of towns around this area of Nillumbik is what the sort of the area we
Yeah.
call. And it's sort of so we grew up around a lot of the pubs and out there doing a lot of blues people doing their things, and a really kind of thriving kind of live music scene, which is really cool, and also very close to Melbourne, which is a very sort of
Yeah.
thriving music scene as well. So we were lucky enough to be surrounded by and had some beautiful mentors of musicians in the area.
What about home? Would your parents have records on at home growing up and stuff like that? Was it a musical house?
Yeah, yeah, they were real lovers of music, and still are. And mum and dad, they still gig to this day. They sing together, which is really beautiful. And dad's always been a singer-songwriter, and they perform, dad's songs mostly with mum in harmony. And we were surrounded by lots of records and a big mixture of things, but I mean, a lot of the not sort of strictly sort of rhythm and blues stuff, a bunch of all sorts of things from their era,
Yeah.
which I guess is a lot of that sort of 60s, 70s sort of vibes. And
Yeah.
but still great records that I still have at my house to this day, which is fun.
Yeah.
So we still swap a lot of records around.
Love it. Well, let's stay in the formative years. I'm going to ask you for track three. Tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school, please, Josh.
Yeah, so I put down Jamie Liddell Multiply, which is a cool, and I think I was about 14 or something when this song came out. So pretty sort of um impactful time for me around this period. We were just sort of getting our sound and working out, our things, and a few of the people that I sort of played with at that time and still playing with now, particularly on this tour, actually, a lot of those same people from high school are session players in this touring band. And um when this album came out, and I remember a friend of mine, Max Turner, who's still a beautiful musician, sort of playing around, brought this record in, and it was for us, it was like because we were listening to a lot of that rhythm and blues stuff, and we had a great mentor at school, Sam Linton Smith, who's the singer from the Honey Drippers in a Melbourne band, and he used to he'd be showing us Sam and Dave records and all this old BB King stuff and Freddie King, and it was kind of hearing this record that had just come out like that, that year, and sort of capturing this sound, which was amazing. And then also his singing, I mean, how this guy could sing,
Yeah.
and And he came out to Australia like a couple of years later. I think we were following him, and I must have been like, maybe I was 18, maybe I was 17 or 18, and he was still performing that record. And um it was I love Jamie's voice, and I just love the production on this track,
Yeah.
so it really influenced me into something that takes me right back to high school, which is cool, which is just something that came out at the time that really was a record that was really impactful, and reminds me of school, reminds me of that era.
You said something that blew my mind then. You said, yeah, I was about 14 and the band was just finding its sound. I mean, that's a very young age for a band to be finding their sound. Um, I'm always intrigued to know what, musicians' career was looking like when they were at school, what they wanted to do. Was there any ever question for you as to what you was going to do? Was it always going to be music?
It was always something I loved, and it was always something I was gonna do for sure. And I think around my school, if you were to ask anybody, it sort of everyone would see me as that was what I did, and that was totally my world. I had a harmonica with me all the time, and I kind of used to get, people get annoyed with me, just like blowing this thing around the school. But and it was, yeah, so always something I did, and I busked every weekend, so I played, and it was how I earned my sort of my bits of money for the weekend, right up until I was from the age of like 13 to when I was so probably 17, and
Yeah,
I started not getting as much when I got older, and it was more, you get that kind of get a job sort of
yeah,
that, when you get a bit older, when you're young and you're playing like blues stuff, and you got a slide guitar and a harmonica around you. It was great, so I used to make, all sorts of change, and that would be my main earnings, and I cruise out to the St Andrews market every weekend
yeah.
religiously, and that would on a Saturday morning. So it was always something I was going to do.
You were a confident kid,
And
Josh. Like, was you confident to be? I mean, as a young lad to be out there busking, that for a lot of people that would be terrifying. But you comfortable doing that?
yeah, I was always a bit of a show off, and a bit of a sort of and really for that reason was why I sort of was the band, you know, not so much leader, but the front person, I guess,
Yeah,
from really early on, and at the age of 13, we still got videos of this, so we played down the Warrandyte Festival, with a lot of the same players that are in this touring party, which is great. Particularly Nick Lawrence, a drummer. He's just been, he was in that first band, um, the Rusty Nails blues band at the time. And this was before Sam was even picking up. Like, Sam's a little bit younger than me, so Sam kind of came in, and we become the Teskey brothers a couple of years later.
yeah,
When he was starting to pick up his guitar, and it was kind of like I kind of actually started singing really only because I was sort of, we were all there. I remember we used to have like, a bunch of friends who were all guitarists. So at one point we were maybe like four guitars, all sort of like, jamming in this band. And it was like, oh, who's going to, be the front person to sing? And it wasn't so much that I was as much of a singer really early on. It was more just that I sort of had the confidence to just be that person up the front
yeah,
there, and do it. So, and that sort of led to me sort of singing more, really, and sort of and kind of focusing on singing as well, because everyone was on the guitar, so it was kind of, it was like, oh well, I'm going to be the. I think at one point I ended up putting down the guitar and playing harmonica and singing, because I was sort of just rolled things that way, and it was
yeah,
just that being that front person, that kind of show off.
yeah. Tell me the first song you remember buying from a record store, please, Josh.
What did I put down for this? I'm gonna this one was I put down an Otis Redding record, didn't I? Yes, I put down a
Yeah,
Dock of a Bay, Otis Redding, that one there. I'm not 100% sure, and this is the first one. Um, I think I can safely say it was the first record, because I didn't buy records until, like a vinyl record, until a
yeah,
little bit later on, and I had this record, maybe at about sort of 15 or 16, and it was sort of you know always for me a very, the in fact the song Dock of a Bay was a sort of like a repeat sort of one as well, to put on, and just a huge record that obviously influenced me a lot, and
yeah,
Otis's vocals. I mean, the more embarrassing one that might have been in CD form might have been like a, like a Green Day record or something when I was about, 11 or something. That would
Yeah,
have been a CD, sort of.
yeah.
But that was out of that era. But
I'm glad you threw in the one that you was a bit more embarrassed about, because Otis Redding for your first record, that's way too cool, man.
that's
You've got
absolutely right. Yeah, so I had to sort of, because I thought I wanted to do something that would, was in reference of what we do and what, we think about. So
yeah,
I thought, it's going to be that, but I had to preface it, but is that I didn't buy records till much later. So
yeah.
there was definitely some more. Let's add an Offspring CD in there. I would say, what's that? What was that early Offspring record? That that
Self-esteem,
CD of
pretty
that
fly
time.
for a white guy.
It must have been Self-Esteem, I reckon. It would have been
Yeah,
Self-Esteem. Yeah, that was in year 7 for us. So around about 12 years old. That was the one
yeah,
doing the rounds at the time, and I think I definitely had a copy of that. So that's
yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, you said that the area that which you grew up in was like, would lean very heavy on sort of like, the rhythm and blues and such. When you sort of said then at school, you was, other people were listening to Offspring and Green Day and things like that. Was you a bit of a lone wolf when it come to what you was listening to? Was there other kids with guitars and harmonicas, playing rhythm and blues at 14, or was everybody listening to Green Day and Blink 182 and stuff like that? Was you out there on your own?
We No, I mean there was a group of us. It was a sort of and musicians that you continue to play with to this day. Particularly mentioning Nick Lawrence on drums, and who's been beautiful to reconnect with him, but a lot of these players all for many years went on to be in various bands and playing together. So there was a real community. There was actually a real community of that thing. What I say, and it wasn't until, I think we all from about, the age of 12 was sort of in year 7 with no one was listening to rhythm and blues at that point
Mm,
yet. Really, it was all records, and it was around about the following year, at 13, and influenced by um, some of the local musicians who taught at our school, who were sort of getting us into this world, and that sort of and sort of getting band arrangements going on, and getting these grooves. So I remember, like, one of our first band grooves um that we were shown by the great Sam Linton Smith at the school there. And I'd mention Ben Robinson as well a little bit later, the double bass player, jazz from around Melbourne, who was at our school. And but the first groove, we got going, and got us into this sort of sound, and things was the teeny weeny bit groove, which is a favorite of Sam's, which is that
yeah,
kind of, which is basically the Otis Redding um tramp, but that,
yeah,
if anyone's familiar with that, and it's that same kind of boom, ba-da, boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
boom, ba-da, boom, 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 and then the guitar, and then we'd have Sam going, "All right," and then the
yeah,
guitar goes, ba-da-doo, ba-da, boom, boom, they're hitting that chord,
yeah,
and then you got that kind of that 9 chord doing that, doing that horn line. We used to play this on the guitar, that, bing, ba-da, and you groove
yeah,
on that. And that was, and we just thought, how cool is this? You can sit on
yeah,
this all day, and that was the stuff that we were surrounded by, the people that were into this as
yeah,
well, which is great. Where it differed, I think, is a lot of these players went on um to, as they got older, move into separate bands formed, and people went into a direction that was a sound, more of a modern sound. And me and Sam had our sort of blues thing that we're doing, that we kind of just kept on doing, and we never stopped. So from that time, so I guess that's the difference. And it was maybe later that we sort of
yeah,
continued on this train, and for years, into our 20s, and a lot of these other bands that had some real breaks in popularity, and we kind of just kept on steady playing the same pubs we were playing. And it wasn't until years later, and only sort of 5 years ago or so, that we made a record, and got that sort of music out there. And I have friends, and I remember talking to some of the guitarists and stuff that I played with back in year 7, and him mentioning when that Half My Harvest record sort of got a few bit of movements, and saying, it's really cool, Josh, because you kind of just kept on doing this thing, and until it sort of got a little bit popular,
Yeah,
and then it stopped. And it's sort of so it's really cool that that this style of music and this sort of this stuff that we always loved
yeah.
found some legs, and so I feel really proud of that.
I love the fact that you just say, we was playing, the pubs and stuff, and it's like, and it's few and far between in the UK now that there's live music in pubs. It's such a, I run a venue in the UK, and it's so tough for live venues to sort of manage to sort of keep going. And my brother lives in Australia, and he runs a venue in a little place called Coffs Harbour, and like when I went out there, like it's just live music everywhere, and it just feels that like the kind of the live scene in Australia for kind of breaking bands and for like sort of pub gigs and things like that, it just seems really healthy, and it's something that I think in the UK we're really sort of up against at the moment.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that's a really cool point to hear. And as an Australian, I think of when I come to the UK, and because there's a lot of things we're missing in our pubs as well. So I mean, when I come to over here and I go, geez, they've got it, man. Like a cozy pub over here is really real. I love that, and it has its sort of, and there's so much pride in that. And when I think of Australian pubs, a lot of the time, it's sort of we don't quite get it a lot of the time. There are a lot of TVs in there, a lot of sports bars, a lot of kind of things like that. But you're right in that most of them, and particularly outside of the city, where it's not so much like the Melbourne live music venues, which are sort of more live music venues rather than just pubs.
Sure.
There are such a strong scene for the for the kind of that rock, that we'd call it Aussie rock band playing in the
Yeah,
pub. And it's and there's bands that make their entire careers of it,
yeah,
doing it. And we did, that was us, and it was and it's healthy. It really is. And there's bands that are around in our area that were playing when I was a kid, and I used to watch, and they're still at it, and they're still
yeah,
playing those same venues, and it's really strong. So it's I'm really glad you saw that, and saw some romance in that, which
yeah.
there really is. But when you grow up around it, you don't think of it as being that beautiful thing, but it really is, and it's a really that's a really cool point. Really cool point.
Let's go clubbing. Did you go clubbing? That's what I want to know. And if you did, what song soundtracked your years going clubbing?
For sure, for sure. So I definitely went through an era of getting around this, and particularly in a in Australia, where out in the we call it a bush doof, where we go out into, like, festivals out in the
Yeah,
out in the bush, and basically, and the sort of DJs play, and we do a bunch of things. So I never, and a bunch of my friends that I hang out with at these things um were really followed the DJs and right into this sort of world. So I never took. I mean, I used to just get around it and just enjoyed the people and just have a hang with people. I never took I never sort of, got these records or got into
yeah,
a lot of the electronic music scene. As much as I love the electronic music scene, I never sort of listened to the music outside of going to these events.
sure.
Um, but where the worlds collide, I think of, and even an area that comes into my genre of music and music that I love, is Fat Freddy's Drop, and this is something I grew up on, from very early on as well. But these guys were sort of playing at some of these festivals, and they had and particularly in their later albums, had records. So I referenced Blackbird, by Fat Freddy's Drop as my sort of my club song,
Yeah,
because this is where, that band, they did have that sound, and they had that area. And the friends of mine that love electronic music loved Fat Freddy's Drop as well. So this was where these worlds collided, whereas I had this singer, and I love this singer in Fat Freddy's, and so I had that kind of soul sound coming through,
mm,
and this New Zealand sound, which is just incredible. And I feel like that is the world that, and this track got played at some of these events. So, whether it was Fat Freddy's Drop actually playing at a festival,
yeah,
it was actually, this would be on in the clubs. This song, it sort of it crossed the worlds for me. So
Yeah.
so I love this song for that reason.
Wonderful. I'm going to take you home for track 6. Tell me a favourite song for an artist from your home county.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to think. This is a really hard one for me because I was thinking about all the different artists from around my area. And I'd love to name a whole bunch of them. Maybe I'll just list a few off at the end. But what I did put down was C.W. Stone King, and I've put down the Jungle Lullaby. Um, so C.W. Stone King is so I think we claim him as an Australian artist. He grew up a lot of his time in America as well, so he's got a lot of that American influenced and a kind of bizarre accent, where you kind of don't know where he's from. But he is one of these characters who creates records. He loves being, like creating an old sound and getting this kind of these records that are, really feel like they're out of a different era. So he is just that guy. He loves it, and he dresses like this. He is the sort of like he comes out of this era. The Jungle Lullaby is just kind of one of my favorite songs of his as well. So it's sort of there's something haunting about this track, and there's something kind of he has his the horn section which come out of Melbourne. I might mention, the Hoodangers horns, and the Hoodangers are a band that grew up playing in all the pubs around Melbourne, and I watched them for many years. So they're a real all-star band of this horn section that play that kind of beboppy horn stuff over what he
Yeah.
does. And there's a moment in this song where he just kind of sings, and it's just the melody, and it's just this old-timey kind of melody to this that the Jungle Lullaby, which I just love, and it was the first song that I thought of as being yeah, from Melbourne, and something that I love.
Love it. Love it. Right. Well, this is your last track, Josh. This is when you get to turn someone onto something new. And I'm going to ask you to tell me a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear.
Ah, yes. So this one, which is a song that I was just listening to the other day, and song that's really close to my heart because I only heard this. And what's really cool about this is this is a band out of the Isle of Wight, from here in the UK. So they're early 2000s, I think 2004 this record came out, and it's a band called the Bees, and the song is I Love You. And another one of these beautiful sort of it's almost throwback. It's relaxed, it's just great music, and it's a beautiful song. I mean, and what's really cool about this is I was shown this when I was working with Paul Butler on our Run Home Slow record. Paul Butler, our producer, on the Run Home Slow record, and talking about his history as a musician. I mean, Paul Butler is an incredible producer and works as a producer to this day. He's done records. My favorite records of his are artists like Michael Kiwanuka. And what I didn't realize working with Paul is that he had this band before he was a producer, the Bees, and that was his and that was his band. So I was blown away by the sound of this, and I do believe this sound is something that in Paul Butler's production of the Teskey Brothers and or his mixing, which he mixed our latest record. He did all the engineering and mixing on this latest record, The Winding Way. It is a sound that he kind of transfers through into us, and it's sort of there in this song. And so yeah, I love this song, and I think it's just beautiful production, and something that I don't know. Maybe people know it more here in the UK. I could be wrong because but back home for me, no one has heard this track, so I try to kind of champion it all over the place.
Yeah, they're an incredible band, and the Bees sort of had. It felt like they had a few years of like when they dropped the single Chicken Playback, and it was huge. Like you could not move for that track. It was everywhere. The clubs were playing it, the radio were all over it, and it just had such a retro sound, and it sort of felt like this band was getting all this attention that sounded like they were just from 30 years previous, and it's such a lovely sound, and then yeah, I don't know, they just seem to sort of just sort of disappear from the radio. I think maybe 2 albums in, and it just seemed to sort of just get a little bit quiet, and it was such a shame because they were really unique at what they were doing, and it was such a beautiful sound. And so it's great. I did not know that that he was producing that and producing yourselves and Michael's music. I mean, yeah, it's mad. I love stuff like this. One of my sort of favorite things about doing this podcast is kind of joining up the dots and going, oh right, so he now does that with them and that. I love that. I love kind of seeing where people's careers go. It's beautiful.
Well, it's
But
a
yeah,
beautiful thing, isn't it? It's actually really lovely to hear someone who was sort of around here, in the UK during that era, with that band sort of doing its thing. And what I love about this as well is maybe they're almost just like ahead of their time in some ways, because it's kind of like it's well, people often reference in the last sort of 5, 10 years that there's been this kind of resurgence of rhythm and blues and soul music and but I prefer to think, when we look at people like Jamie Liddell, we look at people like the Bees, it's nothing new about this. And I think it's just there's a quote from Otis Redding that I would love to mention, because they were talking about their stuff being old school back then, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And they're talking about rhythm and blues, and that was something that and it was like, and and if I can reference anyone to ever listen to something, it would be the intro to Soul Groove 66 from PBS Radio in Melbourne. And Pierre Baroni, the DJ on that record, always played a quote at the beginning of his rhythm and blues radio show that he played. And it was Otis Redding being interviewed, talking about, he goes, rhythm and blues has been here for 100 years. It's like you guys way back with that old guy singing in the barn saying, "Here comes my baby," that old blues song. Blues has been here, and he said way back then in the 60s, and it's going to stay here too.
yeah,
It's sort of it's not going anywhere. It's something that people love, and it's just been on the background in the music, in people's ears in the music. It never it was the top of the charts, the one that was the kind of the big hits, but it's there and people are loving it, and it's not going anywhere, and it never has gone anywhere. So I think it's and so that is so these bands are examples of how much it's there in the scene, and it's always been there.
wonderful. Well, as much as we've been having a lovely time looking back, I want to look forwards, and I want you to tell me what's going to be happening. What's happening in the world of Teskey Brothers?
Absolutely. So we're just getting close to releasing our new record, The Winding Way. We've put out 3 singles so far, well, kind of 4, if you include the cover that we did by the Zombies at the very beginning. So and we've got our last single coming just in a few weeks of this record. So we've kind of done 5 singles kind of before we're going to drop this record in on the 16th of June. This new record that we're really excited about, and the reason being we're waiting on vinyl. You know what I mean? So if anyone wants to know why there's so many singles, it's because the album is finished, but we're waiting on that wax. So we're putting it through like that, and then we're gonna have that record in June. We are currently on tour in the UK and Europe, so we're right smack bang in the middle of that one. We've been on the road for 2 months. We've got another 4 months here in Europe, and then we're going over to America for 3 months. And we've got the most
Yeah,
beautiful touring party, the most amazing band we're working with on this one, and I'll also mention that we're here, we're living here, we're over here. So this is a slow paced tour. So we're playing 2 to 3 shows a week, mostly over the weekends. I'm here with my partner and my 2 kids, and we're sort of at the moment based in Bristol. And I shoot off on the weekends and I play a show, and then I come back and I hang with the family, and my brother Sam's doing the same, and the entire touring party are doing the same. So
I was
so it's
just
kind of this lifestyle sort of tour.
it suits you because I was thinking 2 months into a tour, you're up at 9 a.m. having this chat with me, and you're looking very healthy. So I can see why now. You've just you're picking your shows at the weekend and just doing a nice normal life for the rest of the week. That's a good way to approach touring, I think.
It's a great way. Yeah, we're trying to rewrite things and do it in this way, and it's been really beautiful. And it also means that every weekend, anyone who's coming down to the shows, we turn up on a Friday to play the first show of the week, and everyone is full of energy. We're great to go. And I know, and musically, I mean, obviously a big part of this decision was to you know, to be able to, for the whole all the band to be able to bring their families, make it a lifestyle thing, so we can really believe that, you know, touring musicians can have kids and can sort of
Yeah,
work with the families, and
that's
you know,
great.
so we're trying to do that. But as far as music goes, it's like, I mean, I've seen so many bands at the end of their 3 week run that they look tired and they're looking like
Yeah,
they're struggling to kind of put that performance, to put that excitement back into the performance.
yeah.
So we feel that every weekend we come in, we turn up and we give everything. I'm just going to give all the love, all the energy I can to these audiences, and feel so grateful for them, for these people to be coming down and seeing us. So I want to give them everything I can, and so it's and the entire band are doing that. So it's been a beautiful way musically for us to be able to kind of you know, work in this way too.
Oh, that's great. Josh, we put together a little Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast that feature all of your song picks today. And obviously, we put your music on there as well. If people want to keep up to speed with you and find out where these shows are, where they can see you, where's the best place to keep up with all things Teskey Brothers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really easy one to remember. It is the TeskeyBrothers.com. You know, so that is our website. There's tickets up there, there's our records up there. Yeah, check it out. We'd love to see you down at some of these shows.
Wonderful. Josh, thank you so much for your time today, mate. It's been delightful chatting records with you, mate.
Back at you, my friend. Back at you. Thank you so much for having me. And so good to have a chat with you.
Absolute pleasure. I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.